Hey, what's going on, guys? Today's video is going to be a review of Temtem's Kisiwa update and whether or not I think it's something that you should invest in, whether you're a monster tamer fanatic or otherwise. Now, if you've been around the channel for a while, you know that I actually already have covered this topic of whether or not Temtem is worth the cash, but with the new update came a slight tick in price, and this video was actually requested in the subscriber Discord. So I think that, coupled with the fact that each new update will include more content at a different price, sort of justifies me covering this topic at each major update. Anyways, with this video, I wanted to spend more time actually talking about the game as its own entity rather than using the if you paid $90 for Sword and Shield you shouldn't have an issue buying Temtem because it's less than half the price and has more content. I'm not going to use that argument here because we've already done it and I think I've gotten my point across in a previous video. So we're going to focus more on Temtem as its own entity. So we're going to break this down into a few segments, being the story, how the game plays, and the new Temtem. I'm not going to make this overly complicated and I don't want to entirely spoil everything, but at the same time there will be some mild spoilers. So with regards to the story, you start out left in Tukma after Belsodo destroys your ship, which was originally supposed to be headed to Kisiwa. Luckily, Kisiwa and Tukma are actually sister islands that were once connected, so you're able to actually travel there via rock hopping on the small fragments of what once was a connected island. Upon arriving, you're basically told that there's a war going on between Belsodo and the native Kisiwans, and you're tasked by Kisiwa's only dojo master to help out. Without going too in depth, basically you work your way through the Belsodo forces and eventually get to meet a new admin of the Belsodo named General X, a ruthless tamer whose sole purpose is to gain power by any means necessary. You also meet up with Max, whom you learned was a part of Belsodo, and some interesting stuff happens with that. But like I said, there's a lot more that goes into this, but that's sort of the basic gist without spoiling too much. The story's not anything revolutionary, but it does take some notable risks that I probably don't want to mention for spoiling reasons, but I definitely couldn't see something like Pokemon take that. Even the idea of a war where you're on the forefront of a rebellion is something I'd only expect to see an alternative to Pokemon rather than the game itself. Overall, the new characters you meet are quite interesting. Obviously, General X got that King Bradley vibe by his design, but more notably, I found the character of Musa to be quite interesting. Though somewhat one-dimensional in my opinion, it was sort of cool to see him not only act as a dojo master, but also as a rebellion leader. All in all, I'd say the story is pretty good. It gets a job done, especially towards the end. It opens up a lot of questions that hopefully will be answered in Chipanku. In terms of gameplay, it's obviously 2v2 turn-based combat, but I wanted to focus more on how it plays given the war aspect and how it feels traversing Kisiwa. Now, most of the trainers are unskippable, and while I do like that aspect, it does get tiresome at times. I'm not saying, go the Sword and Shield route where almost all of the trainers are skippable, but a few more skippable trainers would be nice, a few more options. With regards to the main war zone area, aka Yurahu, the war itself is more like a line of tamers, and to be honest, I don't really know how else they could have pulled this off. If the game was real time, then they could have just had hordes of enemies, but that's not really possible in Temtem given the turn-based combat. I would have liked to see more characters perhaps battling in the overworld, even if they just were standing in front of each other, like in Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire, when the evil teams are sort of duking it out on Mount Chimney. It just adds more life to the situation. You do get to battle Max, and while the battle was alright, I was over-leveled because my Tems going into it were already at the level cap, so I do feel like perhaps instead of having everyone having to either get new Tems for Kisiwa or whatever, because, they've been playing for the last 6 months, they should have perhaps had two scaling variants. One mode could be dubbed like the pro mode and the other could be like the newbie mode or something like that, because they recommended using levels 37 to 39, but we've been playing for 6 months. Our Tems are going to be at that level cap. I will say though, regarding the landscape, they make a really effective use of that rock climbing gear, making for interesting nooks and crannies off the beaten path, so it's definitely appreciated. The island of Kisiwa also features a variety of areas, such as an open desert, mountain areas, and caves, so all in all, despite some shortcomings, I think overall it was a really enjoyable experience. So lastly are the Temtem, and without entirely spoiling them, I think the designs are overall a step in the right direction. The one criticism I always hear about Temtem is that the designs are not to people's likings, and although I do find a lot of Temtem designs good, I could definitely sympathize with the point that the first 3 islands have a lot of Tems that are more on the cutesy side. Obviously that's not true for all of them, but there are a lot, so I understand people's criticism on that front. This island, however, brought forth some really interesting designs, more on the rugged front, which makes sense given the type that the island is based off of. Of course, you still get the ones that are more on the cutesy side per se, but I feel like Tems like Goaty and its evolution can sort of tote that line between cool and cute and really appeal to more people. They've also added some really interesting dual type combinations to the game with, for example, Earth Nature, Mental Water, Earth Toxic, and even Earth Electric. So there are more than that, but those are a few that I found really notable. There were 23 new Tems added, with one being unavailable to capture, but Hocus and Pocus, which were previously seen in the game but uncapturable, are now capturable. So that raised the available Tems that you can capture from 76 to 100. So overall, I do think that the Tems are a very strong part of this update. I mean, sure, there's bound to be a stinker here and there, but I think in general, we got some solid designs. All in all, Temtem's Kisiwa update added more to a game that I already thought was worth a $35 price tag. The game is now $37.50 USD, and though on the more expensive side compared to other early access titles, I do think it's still worth the price. If you're someone who enjoys shiny hunting, competitive battling, etc., you'll be right at home and you'll be able to easily put hundreds of hours into this game. I've intentionally left out some of the more endgame activities as they're pretty much unchanged, and I think as of right now, grinding still needs more of an improvement, and we need to see clubs and the chat be fleshed out a little more. And that sort of segues me over to the next point. Kisiwa isn't actually done. They've stated that they'll be having a patching cycle, which makes sense because if you remember from my upcoming Temtem Islands video, Kisiwa is supposed to have a crap ton of neutral types, though we only really get the Goaty line. There's also a snowy mountain that's currently blocked off, so I don't think this is the last we're going to be hearing about Kisiwa. So to close things off, once again, I do think it's worth the money, especially if you're trying to scratch that Pokemon-esque competitive itch and are tired of RNG, an overall lack of game balance, and want devs that actually care about their competitive scene. And like I said, the chat's nice, but I haven't really used it much, and the clubs are basically just cosmetic at this point, so we'll have to wait for more information on those. I do hope this mini review was useful to you guys, and if you did enjoy, make sure to like and subscribe for more Temtem and monster taming content. And thanks so much for watching, guys. I'll see you in the next video. Peace.